The following is a conversation between Matías De Stefano, referred to as me, and his higher self, referred to as I am. The date is December 20th, 2020, and the subject is the emotional aspect of the ankles in the sign of Sagittarius. Me. Tomorrow begins a new great journey for me, a journey towards myself on a level I would never have thought. I am the one with the responsibility of assuming the I am. Me. Yes, that's what I feel. In 2012, on February 7th, I officially started my first journey of consciousness. I started the Harvitum, the path from north to south. And despite the fact that prior to the 11/11 meeting at Capilla del Monte in November 2011, I already made a small path to connect the networks that would allow us to do the task. At that time, I did not understand very well what I was doing. He was practicing something that would be much bigger. I understood in 2012 that my life was not in Argentina. My life was the earth, and therefore I would travel around it, connecting all its roads. That year, 2012, I traveled 40 countries in 6 months. I visited more than 100 places distributed by different climates and geographies, sacred and historical sites of the earth. I traveled by car the 4 countries of the southern Andes, Chile, Peru, Bolivia, and Argentina, visiting some 24 regions, and by December 21st, 2021, it had already touched the 7 continents and the 5 oceans. Throughout that year, I could feel all the roads, cultures, lands, everything connected. The world was no longer a distant place, but a garden. It was my home, part of my life, my family. I understood that from that moment, all places were close, and there was no place out of my reach. I am. It was your destiny. Me. Yes, I understood. It is written for me. Because I myself write it in my soul, I would find joy and fulfillment on the journey on the roads. For this reason, I took advantage of the position of the moon in front of the constellation of Sagittarius, so that my soul would always launch itself to discover its happiness in the expansion of movement. Once my grandmother told me that when I was about 4 or 5 years old, she went to see a psychic, a lady who read palms. The lady told her, "You have a little boy at home with whom you are very connected," to which my grandmother nodded, confirming by saying my name. And then the lady said, "Oops, my God, how many trips! I see planes, many planes, flying all over the world. This child will travel all his life to too many places, but he will always come back. And if one day he says that he wants to be an airplane pilot, tell him no." I am. Good advice. Me. I like to fly, yes, but I don't know much about machines, so that flight would have been the shortest of my life. I am. Ha ha ha. I think so. Me. That lady was right. Some 15 years later, my world travels would begin, and they would never stop. I have come to travel to many places on the same day, without stopping. I have found peace and creativity between airports, trains, cars, and boats. He found harmony in the journey, not so much in the destination. I am. There was the escape point. Me. Yes. What I noticed is that the moon in Sagittarius helps me find balance in the transformation and the path, but quite the opposite in the destination or the starting point. There I feel uncomfortable, being still in the same place, to the point that when I arrive, I am already thinking about the next point and how to get there. I am. You have come to connect, not to anchor, and therefore your soul seeks to move. Remember, they told you. To remember is to remember, to put the parts back together, the members that make up a being or a group. And there are 2 ways to do this task: moving through the world, weaving the web like a spider, or staying in the center of the woven web, immutable like the spider itself. But to achieve this second step of staying on the axis, You had to move by weaving that web. Me. Someone told me that the reason for my constant travels is because I want to escape responsibility or face what really matters. I am, and so it is, that you have done from unconsciousness. Escaping, playing like a child, afraid to face your truth, overloaded with unnecessary baggage to cover you with missions so as not to face your purpose. Running around the world, desperate to get to a place that doesn't exist. Your quality is your own trap. You have come to connect through travel, moving, tracing paths, and it is precisely this that has taken you away from yourself, putting your goals on the horizon, desperate to never get anywhere. For years, you must have run after sunrises and sunsets, climbed mountains and descend valleys, crossed deserts and seas, walked through islands and steppes, forests and cities, to know that the further you went looking for something outside. Me, I was getting closer to myself, and at the same time more lost, like someone who goes around in a circle and when approaching the center gravity accelerates the movement. Dizzy, the more paths I traveled, the more I fell on myself, not understanding that I was coming back to myself. I am, well, all roads lead to you. No matter how far you go, no matter how many destinations you arrive at, all of them will pass one day, and the only thing that will remain in each place is you. Imagine then that instead of you moving through the world, it is actually the world that moves around you. For mind, soul, and biology, it is as if you are always in the same place, in the here and now, and everything around you changes. Thus, the only thing that remains, the only thing that is origin and destination in itself, is you. Me. When I understood this, I stopped running, and that was this 2020. I stopped before the coronavirus stops us all. I remember in February I asked my guides, what am I supposed to do now? And they told me, find a quiet place and wait, because your path begins in August. It seemed strange to me that they told me that I had to stay still without traveling for so many months when there was so much to do. I thought it would not be literal, but it was. The endless quarantine taught me that all destinations lived in me, that the need to travel the world was simply to prevent me from traveling by myself for fear of seeing what was in me. This is what has made so many people desperate this year. Lock yourself up. Beyond the fact that most people do not travel, the simple fact of leaving home, going to work, to a bar, to a square, to lead an active life in a social space, was already experienced as a trip. Going out projects us outwards, and therefore everything that lives inside is projected onto others. This way it is easier to live because there is no responsibility, since others are blamed for their own ills. They criticize the government, culture, everything that surrounds us. Not being able to move changed this, and forced humanity to stay inside, and therefore the gazes turned inwards. This is how a desperate journey begins, in which one's emotions manifest themselves, one's own shadows appear, and suddenly the depression of seeing and perceiving everything that I have been denying begins. For those who had been looking the other way during their lives, this confinement was and is desperate. But for those of us who have had the practice of meditation to work our shadows, desires, conflicts, inconsistencies, this time was a gift, a blessing. For me personally, it reminded me that I could feel fulfilled by being in the center of the web instead of weaving it. I always believed that it must be the spider moving in the web, weaving, connecting, forgetting that the spider itself, at the end of its weaving, places itself in the center, in the axis, and supports, perceiving the vibrations of all the connection created. I am. You are all the steps, you are all the ways, all the trails. Walker, there is no path. The path is made by walking. You are the walker. You are the walker of heaven and the walker of earth. Your path is that of all, because you recognize that all paths lead to you, that you are the I am. Each living being walks a path in his life, builds his own story, each searching for himself from the unconscious or the conscious. The path of unconsciousness is the hopeful search for a reunion with others or something outside that completes you and makes you feel full. But the conscious walker is the one who, in exile from his own being, hopefully seeks a reunion with himself. Where do you expect this reunion from? Me, from consciousness, knowing that it is the world that moves and that I remain on an axis in me. And from this axis I can move through the world without getting lost, knowing that each step I take on the paths of creation is to recognize the reunion with my own being. I am. It is the I looking for the I am. It is the personality looking for the essence. And remember that you are everything. You are the one fragmented into thousands, like the nucleus of a world that expands in the thousands of forms of its crust, molded by water, air, fire, and earth, making the thousands of forms look for unity. This way, you will be able to understand that on each trip, you do not discover something new about the world, but rather you rediscover a forgotten part of your being, the unique being that you are. Me. That is why we are invited to travel, to move, to be walkers, not to go outside, but to unite the parts of the inside. What is my trip? I am. Your journey is the same that everyone has to travel. Journey comes from the Latin viaticum, the attribute of traveling a path, of going from east to west, like the sun, which has given rise to the English word journey, from the Indo-European Dieu, which is brightness, light, day, God, the path of the sun from the east to west. Me. Therefore, walking the path of light and shadows is the only way to experience divinity, because it is in the journey of the sun that I find the divine. The important thing is not the destination, but the path. That is to say that there is no destiny other than me, than my axis, my coherence, the center of the cosmos. And for this reason, the universe seeks to move, to create from said axis. That is the logic of the world in constant movement. I am. You are the world, and when you walk in it, you do nothing more than caress the skin of the expanded being you have become. You recognize on the path the divinity that you are. Me. There is no destiny other than myself. I am my destiny. I am each step, each starting point, each origin, each purpose. I find myself in each goal, each mountain, lake, tree, temple, city, person, animal, on the other. I am. All roads lead to me. Me. Well, I am the way.
My